You're listening to Unfiltered, real talk about sex and love with Ashley
and Heather. And if you're watching on YouTube today, you probably noticed that it looks a little bit different.
Yes, I am currently just outside of Nashville, Tennessee. As most of you know, Pure Desire is relocating our ministry headquarters from the Portland, Oregon area to the Nashville, Tennessee area. And I'm the first one to take the dive. So we're kind of settling and waiting for the rest of the crew to get down here. And we'll be recording virtually until we get our studio all set.
Yeah, but we're going to do the best that we can do and answer the questions that come in to us, and which we love that. I know that sometimes we get emails that are just a line or two, and sometimes we get emails that are several paragraphs, people just sharing their stories with us, and we really value that. And thank you so much for trusting us with your questions. And so on today's episode, we're going to be talking about emotional betrayal, trauma, and healing.
Yeah, good stuff. Like Heather said, we're overwhelmed with just, I guess, a sense of sacredness that we receive your guys' questions. And we know that some questions that come in, it will give this long backstory, and then it will break it off and say, okay, here's my question. Please don't share my backstory. And some, we know it's the first time they're asking it out loud, or that they finally realize there's a safe place to ask. And so we really mean it when we say we'll talk about anything. If you can think about it, we'll talk about it. Send us your questions. We hold each one, and we will get to each one eventually. Okay, the first one is, in 2006, I found out my husband had a pornography addiction. He later worked at a church and grew close to a female worker. In January 2021, he admitted relapsing and revealed that his coworker helped him stop, claiming to be in love with her. I saw it as an emotional affair and asked him to stop texting her. 4 years later, he still texts her, and I feel betrayed. Am I unreasonable in asking him to sever ties and stop all contact? No, you are not being unreasonable, especially this going on 4 years later. And I feel like with female male relationships in a marriage, your guard has to be so incredibly high. And if you're uncomfortable with a female relationship that your husband has, I do not think it's unreasonable at all to say, we've experienced betrayal. This feels off, and I don't want you to have a relationship with her, because in my opinion, no job, no relationship with a coworker, no friendship is worth your marriage, sacrificing your marriage, or I don't know if they have kids, but your family over. And so it's not unreasonable to ask that. I would be concerned, I guess, if my husband did not want to honor that. And even if you were able to create, alternatives of saying, okay, maybe you have to have a relationship with her at work because you work with her. I would not mind being copied on the emails, or making sure that when you guys communicate, there's always a third person around, that you avoid being one-on-one, that you stick to email communication through the church email rather than phone texting. I think there are alternatives if the betrayed spouse, if the wife is okay with that. But ultimately, if she says, I can't feel settled and I can't trust being in this marriage if you're in continuous conversation or relationship with this female, then really he's choosing that relationship over the marriage, in my opinion.
Yeah. And like you said, it's okay for you to have boundaries like that, for you to want there to be boundaries that protect your marriage. And I think that the other thing that I notice in this question is that it looks like she already asked him to not have communication with this coworker, and then 4 years later, he's still doing it. And not only the emotional affair, but just the extent of that deception and the lies. And I think that would be a really challenging situation, because you don't want to throw out ultimatums and then never follow through. But again, hopefully she's in group. Hopefully she has a safety action plan. Hopefully she has some other things in place that could help this situation. But I agree, if this has been going on for 4 years, it might take something more serious in order for him to stop, or to make the decision that if he is choosing her over you, that then maybe it's time for you to make informed decisions about your future.
Yeah, and that you kind of touched on it, but I would hope there's other things going on that we're not just in a marriage where there's been some trauma and some betrayal and we're just hoping for the best. Um, he should be in group. You should have your support so that you can have that grounding and be able to process things out loud with your group and then kind of sift through what it is you're really feeling and what you need. I know there's several times where I'll feel triggered about something. I can feel it in my body and my mind that something's going on. I feel off, but I'm not yet sure what it is I'm wanting or needing. And that's where having good friends who've been through this, mentors and group can be important because then you can figure out what it is you need. Do you need some really clear boundaries with this relationship? Do you need to talk with your husband that maybe a different job needs to be pursued? Do you need to say, okay, well, if you're going to choose to continue to be in relationship with this female coworker, then I'm going to leave, or I'm going to go stay with my mom for a while. And so I think it's important to be able to sift through that and know exactly what it is you're asking. But it sounds pretty clear in this that this relationship is bothersome and he doesn't see it that way. And so again, you're at one of those crossroads where if he's not willing to change or see or have empathy or honor what you're asking for, then you're left with deciding, is this what I want my life to look like?
Mm-hmm. These are tough decisions too.
Yeah, it really is. I remember early in our marriage, John being a crew boss, he would have all kinds of people texting him. And when you've experienced betrayal, the level of safety that you require and communication and guardrails is higher. I mean, it really is, because if you're going along your marriage and think, oh, he's honoring me in a way that a husband should, in a way that, and he's covering and protecting me and being the Christian husband that he should, and you find out that's not true, then you are more vulnerable to things coming in your marriage that create wedges and chaos. And so I kind of went about life just fine. Like, oh, he's a crew boss. He has to text all his people and his crew. But then after betrayal, when I see messages come through for girls that are just random, like, oh, hey, how's it going? How was your weekend? That's not okay. Like 0, 0, 0, because now I realized he doesn't actually have the boundaries or he doesn't actually have the self-awareness and the self-control that I thought he had. And so we need to put higher things out there to protect our marriage because he's clearly vulnerable to these areas, really vulnerable. And so that's one of those things where the husband needs to be willing to sacrifice his freedoms if he's betrayed his spouse, even if, which I'm not sure I believe, but even if there is nothing going on, there's no emotional connection with this woman, he needs to recognize I have hurt and betrayed my spouse. And so even though that's not what's going on, I need to be willing to sacrifice freedoms that I have or decisions that I think I can make in order to rebuild her trust. And he doesn't have to, but if he doesn't, then she may choose not to stay in that relationship.
Yeah, so true.
Okay, the next question is, I've been married for 19 years with 2 children. My husband is generally a good father and husband, but struggles with sexual unfaithfulness, particularly pornography. He claims to be 4 months porn free, but we haven't gone through full disclosure. Though we've done groups and counseling, I feel emotionally exhausted and unsupported, especially when he deflects my concerns about his actions. I'm unsure how to manage my exhaustion while supporting him and address his lack of transparency in recovery. What can I do? Okay, so they have said they've done groups and counseling. So I would suggest working with a counselor to go through that full disclosure process, with which a lot of the counselors will incorporate a polygraph, a lie detector test. And so I think that's definitely the next step, is getting a foundation for truth. It goes back to that. It's very hard to rebuild if you haven't cleared all the rubble. And so for your sake, to know what it is exactly that you are trying to heal from and move forward from and rebuild trust from. And then for your husband's sake, he will never be able to be what he is supposed to be if he's still holding back lies and little things that are causing him shame, as far as, well, if she knew this, then she would really leave. Like, everybody just needs to put it out there so that you know what you're working with and you know how you're supposed to rebuild. And then it might be a good idea to have another polygraph in 6 months and maybe a few on the books, so that you can put your mind at ease and say, okay, we've done the full disclosure, everything's out. hopefully he's still moving forward in some kind of recovery after that full disclosure. And then knowing that you've got a polygraph, 6 months down the road. So if you start wondering, is he telling me the truth? You can just kind of let it go and say, in 6 months, we'll do another polygraph. And if these continue to be negative or failed polygraphs, then I may decide I can't be in this marriage if he's not willing to work and tell the truth. And we know polygraphs they're not 100% accurate. And that's why I would say take a few and make sure that you do it with somebody who is an expert, maybe somebody who does the full disclosure process and they have a contact of somebody that they know specializes in polygraphs for people who have been unfaithful sexually. But I mean, this seems like a theme with a lot of our questions, this round of recording that, okay, we're stuck. We've done these things or we haven't done. Either way, we're not moving forward. And my addicted spouse is not doing the work or showing the empathy or growing. And so it goes back to you need to decide what you need. You need to tell him what you need. Hopefully he chooses to do it. But like you said earlier, Heather, and then following through. If you say, we're going to have some abstinence sexually, or, I need you to sleep in the guest room until you're willing to work on this marriage, then follow through with that so that you can have some peace knowing that every night you don't have to wonder, okay, where are we at? Is he going to be honest? What kind of conversation are we going to have? You can kind of just say, I've made it clear we're taking a pause here until he shows that he's really invested in his healing. And then, wait to see if he accepts that. And then at some point you may say, if you're not willing to change, then this marriage can't stay the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In her question, she says, I'm unsure how to manage my exhaustion while supporting him and address his lack of transparency. I think sometimes, especially for betrayed partners, they feel a little bit responsible to have to be like cheering him on and, just supporting him and being a raving fan. And sometimes that is too big of an expectation for betrayed partners, because if this is the person who hurt us and we still love them, and that's true, but at the same time, it might not be good for your mental health to be supporting him when you're feeling exhausted, when you're having all of these other things going on. It might be time for you to say, you know what? I'm going to get into group. I'm going to get into counseling just for me because I don't know how to do this and how to support you. And so I'm going to step back from being a support person for you. And hopefully he has a group or he has a counselor or somebody else to do that for him. But it's the same way that we encourage partners to not be the accountability person for their spouse because they end up being re-traumatized. And I just think that sometimes that it's okay to step back and say, you know what, this is hurting me. To do this to support you, this is hurting me. It's hurting my mental health. It's hurting my ability to move forward in my healing. And so this needs to look different going forward. And I think that that's okay too.
Yeah, definitely. And I've had to do that in our marriage and our recovery process. And there's been a time where John said, well, I didn't want to share all what was going on because I know you're under a lot of stress and blah, blah, blah. And I'm thinking, yeah, that's the thought process you should have had before you made the decision, not about disclosing it to me and saying that you need help. And so it's okay to get to the point and as a betrayed spouse, and it can be very freeing to say, this is your deal. We've done groups. We've done counseling. You have the tools. You have the knowledge. Nobody can force you to drink. Like you have been led to the water. You have everything you need. And now you need to decide if you are going to do the hard work to be the man that you should be and to heal from this. And until then, I'm going to go do my own thing, have my own support. And I'm here if you're willing to engage in an honest way. But at some point, it's like you've got everything you need. Now you just need to make the decision to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So good. Okay, our last question says, since 2020, D-Day, my husband has been in therapy, and although we started counseling together, the focus shifted to his healing. He often expresses unhappiness and says the family would be better off without him. He yells at our sons and creates constant conflict. After 4.5 years, I see no growth and I feel exhausted considering divorce. I find it odd that his therapist has never reached out to check in with me. Is this normal? So if I remember right about this story, it seems like they started counseling together with a specific therapist. And then at one point, the therapist said, basically that the husband needs so much focus and work. And so he stopped meeting with both of them together and then just started meeting with the husband. And I think that she is feeling, she's concerned because she's not seen any of the fruit after 4.5 years, any of the fruit or what you would expect from somebody who's been in therapy that long. And so to answer her question, is this normal? Because of HIPAA laws, the therapist would never reach out to discuss anything about about what they're doing in therapy because they can't. Sometimes when it is important and something specific, the patient, so in this situation, the husband could tell the therapist, it's okay if you talk with my wife about these specific things, and they would sign a waiver that would allow the therapist to talk with them. But I don't know if that would be helpful. I think that she's feeling concerned because he says he's doing therapy and he says he's doing the work, but she's not seeing the fruit of that. And with all of the other things that are going on, I think that she's just feeling lost. So, and especially if she's considering divorce, I just think she's thinking that that's the only option. And so I guess my recommendation would be to first start with your husband and say, you know what? It would really help me if you could share even just a little bit about what you're learning in therapy, what you guys talk about, how is it helping you? Because I'm not really seeing any growth in these areas. And so maybe I'm just looking for something in the wrong areas. And so if you could just tell me, even share a little bit, that would really help me to rebuild trust with you. That would help me to see that you're actually doing the work, because from my vantage point, I don't see that this is working. And, and for her then to also be honest that because I don't see this working, I'm starting to feel like my next choice is to divorce you and to leave this relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so hard, especially and that's where I go back to, it doesn't matter what boxes you're checking, because you could be sober without actually healing some of the things. And that's where it does get tricky. Okay, I'm not acting out with porn or masturbation or affairs, but you're still yelling at the kids. You're still short-tempered. You're still lacking empathy. You're still not in touch with your emotions and knowing what you need. And so, I have a really huge mama bear living inside of me. And when it comes to my kids, and I'm like, okay, I mean, it's devastating and heartbreaking and crippling for you to betray me. But once your behaviors, your addict behaviors start impacting our kids, this is where I'm like, here's what I need to see from you. And if I don't see that from you, I am going to protect our kids from your addict behaviors. And so I would suggest at this point, after 4.5 years with the same counselor, I would highly suggest finding a different counselor, suggesting trying something different. And maybe, whatever it is you see being the core problem. And so is it trading addictions? Does he need to see somebody who specializes in multiple addictions? Is there a lot of shame? Like I saw that at some point with my husband, that he was parenting through a shame filter. And it really seemed like he needed to do some deeper work with family of origin work. And where is that shame coming from? And so I would suggest, like Heather said, saying, I need you to share how you're growing and changing and what you're learning. And also, I think it'd be wise to try something else, because after 4.5 years, I don't see what I need in order to feel safe and not feel like I'm living constantly exhausted, and I see it impacting our sons, and I don't want that for them. So I need you to do something different so that we see change. And if you could give a list of things like, that I need to see you emotionally available for our sons. I want to see you come home from work and not be angry and edgy. And the danger there is, if they're not self-aware, which it doesn't sound like he is, then they can say, well, it's because I'm stressed and I feel like the son should be doing more around the house. And I had a long day at work. And those are all excuses when it's chronically this way and he's chronically yelling and acting out that way with the son. So just tell him what you need. Start looking for other options, have him look for other options. Hopefully he'll do that. And then make sure to have your own support, because there is a balance of having understanding and having grace, but not enabling, and having good boundaries and be able to say what you need, and being able to weigh where is that tipping point where what he's doing is causing more damage to our family than not. And so that really takes being able to have somebody to talk through all those with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And also being able to support your kids and protect your kids, because they know what's going on in the family. Even if nobody has told them straight out, they know what's happening. They feel what's happening. They're experiencing it. And so just being able to either give them support, that you support them, or for them to also be in counseling can sometimes be really good depending on their ages. But if there's chronic chaos in your family, they're experiencing that in a deep, deep level, and you want to make sure that they're getting the help they need to.
Yeah. I mean, and it really makes you mad as a parent that your spouse can do something that's harming your kids. I mean, that is just so hard to deal with, but make sure to not deceive your kids, even though that's not what you're trying to do, because you want to protect them. But if they're coming to you and saying, what's going on? It seems like you and dad are not okay. Why is dad always yelling? Just make sure to validate that. And you don't have to tell them everything, but you can say, you know what? Your perception is right. There is stuff going on. Your dad has some work he needs to do. He's struggling with addictions, or, whatever the level is, depending on the kid, but just make sure that you do validate them, that what they're sensing is true and accurate.
Mm-hmm.
Not always the easiest answers, and not always the answers we want to hear. But we like to be real and give real answers. And this is, years of experience and years of seeing couples come to us. And the sad truth is, the sad truth and the good truth is, we have control over ourselves. And so regardless of what our spouse is doing or not doing, we do always have a choice to not stay stuck there. And we don't always have to feel that amount of pain and hardship. There is growth. There is hope that you can have, even if your spouse chooses not to do the work they need to be doing. And you have a whole team of people who have been here and done that, and you are not alone in this. And we promise you that there is opportunity for this to be better for you. So thank you so much for joining our conversation today. And we just hope this was helpful for you. And if it was, be sure to share it with a friend. We want to hear your questions. If you can think it, we should be talking about it. So email us at unfiltered@puredesire.org and send us your questions.